Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm a teacher and author, and this is English Nerd. Alright, we are well into Dante's Inferno in this series, all about the work. So we're going to talk about Cantos 21 and 22 today. Both of them cover the same section of the Inferno, and so it just makes sense to talk about them together. So last time I talked about, I keep saying we, like the royal we, but I talked about how Dante and Virgil are going through Circle 8, Malbolge, and they're making their way through those bolgias, those ditches, evil ditches you could call them. And it was the Simoniacs and the fortune tellers and diviners last time. Now we're at Bolgia 5. There are going to be 10 in all. And this one deals with the grafters. So graft and corruption is something that we hear occasionally as like a two-part sort of crime, but it's not a term that we use very often. Oh, he's a grafter, she's a grafter. So for anybody who's unaware, maybe your translation has a better word for it, but my translation says grafter, and that is corrupt politicians, basically those who took bribes. And a lot of it is that the lying and being unfair with money. So much like the Simoniacs were corrupt religious figures, now we have corrupt political figures. Most years I get asked by my students, why are the grafters lower than the Simoniacs? Wouldn't it make sense to have those switched? I agree. I'm not sure why the grafters are lower down. It would seem, based on what we've seen from Dante so far, that those would be flipped. But for whatever reason, here we are in Bolgia 5 with the grafters. So let's take a look. These are some of the grotesque cantos. I've heard a couple names for them. So this is about as crass as Dante gets. In the Inferno, at least. So Dante and Virgil continue on to Bolgia 5, and they're chatting, and Dante says, I'm not going to tell you what we talked about, but eventually we came to this next section, and here's what I saw. Line 19 is where I'm beginning. I saw the pitch, so tar, right? But I saw nothing in it except the enormous bubbles of its boiling, which swelled and sank like breathing through all the pit. And as I stood and stared into that sink, my master cried, "Take care!" and drew me back from my exposed position on the brink. So this is our first introduction to this section. All of the sections, of course, have their own little ecosystems, I guess. And this one is a boiling pit of tar where Dante initially doesn't see any of the souls. It turns out that they're in that tar. They're invisible under that sticky pitch. Couple things about this moment. Because Dante almost falls in, or he's certainly in danger being exposed like that, not only from falling into the pit of tar, but also we find out just after this that there is a demon running toward them, and really demons everywhere that are just out for blood. Because of this, some people think that Dante would have placed his character in this section if the character had died. I've mentioned this before. So the options that I've heard are that he would place himself among the wrathful in Circle 5, the violent against oneself in Circle 7, Round 2, or here in Bolgia 5 of Circle 8. I think the best case to be made is Circle 7, and if you want to watch that video, then that is available to you, but this is another theory. In any case, Virgil is taking care of Dante as he does as they've been going along. So a demon runs toward them, holding a couple of sinners that he's returning to the pitch, because that's basically what these guardians are there to do. They definitely have their own vibe, as we'll see, but these demons are meant to keep the souls from escaping and running away, because this is one of the only places where they attempt that at all. They try to get out of their punishment, which is on brand for corrupt politicians, and they increase their torture if they do attempt such things. So the demon runs toward them. Virgil manages to get Dante off to the side, and this demon appears to be a sort of general or higher ranking demon, because he calls out to the other ones, and the others respond. There's a nice biblical reference here when the demon says, in this one city where apparently a lot of these grafters come from, an Italian city, of course, because that's how Dante rolls. The demon says, "There, yes is no and no is yes for a fee." The Bible says, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no." Don't swear falsely and that kind of thing. Or don't swear at all, because just to let your yes be yes and your no be no. But these grafters can be persuaded if you just give them a bribe. So it's a nice way to sum up what their problem is. So these demons also, I forgot to mention, have grappling hooks. So they're almost fishing for these souls as they come up for a reprieve from the torture of being in this boiling pitch. So we'll see that come into play more in the next canto, but this one's really just setting up the danger of this section, particularly for Dante. The way Virgil responds implies that Dante definitely could get physically harmed, if not killed, in this section if he is not careful. So, yes, before moving on, I want to look at one more passage here. And so there are all these demons, right? And one of them says to one of the souls, "Stay below unless you want a taste of a grappling hook." Okay, so that explains what's going on. Then they raked him with more than 100 hooks, bellowing, "Here you dance below the covers. Graft all you can there. No one checks your books." So this brings us to the contrapasso, punishment matching the crime, which we've seen Dante intentionally do in each of the sections so far. There's something about the punishment that matches the crime that landed everybody there. So this one's an interesting one to consider. The demon here explains a little bit. So stay there, out of sight. There's something hidden about being a grafter, taking bribes. Obviously, you don't want to be exposed, or else the public will perhaps tear you literally or figuratively to pieces. So there's that connection. There's also, as my translator points out, and I think he makes a good point, the idea of sticky fingers, which was a way of describing that desire for money way back in 1300 as well as now. So now they're sticky all over. And even the demons themselves act much like the grafters did. So we see them in this quasi-military society almost, in the way that they respond to each other. It's pretty grotesque, so I'm not going to go into too many details, but a lot of their actions and words mirror military language and formations. So you have that people who are of high status would be, soldiers and things like that. Military leaders. There's also a lot of infighting with these demons. They fight each other in the next canto after something goes wrong, and they lie, as we'll see very soon. So they act much like the grafters did, but now the grafters are at the mercy of these over-the-top horrible creatures. So these fiends have really bizarre names. We start to get them after Virgil says, "Okay, Dante, things seem really dicey here. Why don't you hide behind this rock? I'm going to talk to the leaders and let them know that we have leave to pass. And then once the danger is gone, you can come out. So that all happens. Virgil basically gives the speech that he gave Charon at the beginning, and several other people and beings as they've gone along their journey, that this is willed by God, and they would do well not to hinder them. And so the demons say, sure, we'll abide by that, which we'll find out very soon is also a lie. So Dante comes out, and the demons start taking almost a roll call. There's dragon tooth and pig tusk and crazy red and cat claw and all these just really farcically horrible names. And it depends on your translation what those sound like, but no matter what the translation is, all of a sudden it sounds like you're in some sort of horror cartoon almost. And this is intentional on Dante's part. One of the most interesting theories that I've heard about this section, these two cantos, it's sort of 2.5 that finish up the episode with these demons and the grafters, is that Dante, with his Divine Comedy, is building almost like a cathedral structure. Bear with me. Like an inverted cathedral structure. So you think it's a funnel. It goes down. If you were to turn it right side up, it would have these very high ceilings. At the beginning of it, we had Minos, who's like that anti-priest. Everyone confesses to him, right? And then they're immediately punished. Here, it's almost like the gargoyles on the outside of that church facade. I haven't looked extensively into that theory, but I think it's a really cool one. There's this grotesque aspect to this cathedral sort of structure that he's building. All right, before we move on to the next canto, we're still in Canto 21, although I've been talking a little bit about both. The demons mention that there is a bridge out. So remember, the pits have these bridges that go over, and that's Dante and Virgil have been using those to get from one to the next, so they don't have to go through the whole thing. And the bridge has collapsed. The demon explains that there was an earthquake that shook all of hell, and it ended up having shaking these bridges so much that they collapsed into rock pieces. And that's true of some of the bridges, but then the demon says if you just go this way, then you can make it to the next bridge. And it turns out that one is out as well. That big earthquake, by the way, if you follow the description of when it was and how it happened, corresponds with the death of Christ, shaking the foundations of hell, and it's kind of a nice poetic way to describe the disruption that happened there because of the death on the cross. All right. Dante is not thrilled with this section. He doesn't trust people. He doesn't like it. He wants to get out. And that pretty much closes out Canto 21. So Canto 22 is a little bit more about the grafters themselves, because the one before was really about the demons more so. So let's kind of cut to the chase here. Canto 22, line 31 is where I'm going to look. I saw, the dread of it haunts me to this day. One soul that is in the pitch, linger a bit too long. As it sometimes happens, one frog remains while another spurts away. And Catclaw, who was nearest, ran a hook through the sinner's pitchy hair and hauled him in. So they've caught one. And the demons are all excited because they can tear this guy to pieces. And it's really grotesque. I mean, they're tearing this guy to pieces. And Dante still says, would you mind if I interviewed him? It's almost funny in its absurdity. Dante clearly does not care about this guy. He's calmly asking questions while this person is being just torn to smithereens. Oh my gosh. We don't find out the name of this guy, but we do find out that he's from Navarre. And he tells his story as most of the souls do, because they do want to be remembered, and hopefully in some cases remembered well. Let's see. Yeah, once again, I'm gonna cut to the chase. So, yeah, we don't know who this guy is. The most important part of this exchange, in my opinion, is the end, when Dante and Virgil are, especially Dante, is wondering how many other Italians are in there, because Dante, of course, sees Italians in every section. That's where the poet was from, and so he's wondering. And the guy from Navarre, who is being torn apart, says, yes, there are lots of Italians in there. I can get some to come out and talk to you if you want. Now listen to how this all goes down. Still Canto 22, but now line 97. If either of you would like to see and hear Tuscans or Lombards, the Pale Sinner said, 2 regions of Italy, I can lure them out of hiding if you'll stand clear and let me sit here at the edge of this ditch and get all these black talons out of sight. That's kind of the name that they use for all of these demons. They call them black talons. For while they're here, no one will leave the pitch. In exchange for myself, I can fish you up as pretty a mess of souls as you like. I have only to whistle the way we do when one of us gets free. Dead Dog raised his snout as he listened to him, then shaking his head said, Listen to the grafter spinning his tricks so he can jump from the brim. And the sticky wretch who was all treachery. Oh, I am more than tricky when there's a chance to see my friends in greater misery. Dun dun dun. There's a lot to unpack here. So apparently when one of the sinners gets free, then they can whistle and let the others know that the coast is clear so they can also make a run for it. At least that's according to this guy, which is somebody that you can't trust because he's a grafter. So he makes this offer. I'll bring up several people for you demons to harm and you Italians to interview if you'll just let me go back in where, it's not as painful. And eventually they agree, yes, the demons will get out of sight so that the other souls won't be afraid to come up out of the pitch, and then they can carry on, and the guy from Navarre will jump back in exchange. So it sounds like it's going to work out for everybody. What a great deal. However, as soon as the demons back up, the guy just jumps back in. He doesn't follow through on his promise. What? He breaks his promise to save his own skin, or improve it. At least it's not saving it. I mean, of course, right? We have seen the souls here in the Inferno continuing to be who they were in life. You think about Capaneus in Circle 7, who was blasphemous in life and blasphemous in death. We have this guy who was grafter in life, he's a grafter in death. So many of those same tendencies just continue on and underline the idea that this does make sense as a place for them. And again, it's not like you need to agree with everything that Dante is saying, but it makes a kind of poetic sense for sure. This does not go over well when the soul jumps back in to the pitch. The black talons get absolutely enraged because they're embarrassed and annoyed and all those things that you don't want to feel. So one of them goes after the guy, but it's too late. He can't catch him. And they start fighting among themselves, just trying to rip each other to pieces. It just becomes this violent, horrible scene with these people. The different demons need to actually get some of the others out from the pitch because they are fighting so close to the tar that they start getting sucked in. It's just chaotic. So Virgil and Dante get the heck out of there, and who could blame them? Not me, that's for sure. So they slip off, hopefully unnoticed, and just move on to the next section. But Dante really spends some time with these corrupt politicians and the different elements of what it means to be one. So there you have it. Next time it's going to be a couple more bolgias, but today it's just the grafters and the demons with the crazy names and crass gestures and language and all that. So yeah, I hope you got something out of this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit those notifications because I have lots of English nerdy videos on the way, not just about the Inferno, but about many, many other things. So that's it. Until next time.